Welcome to the channel Stracora Coins. And what if I told you that the change rattling around in your pocket right now could secretly hold the key to a fortune so vast it could change your entire life overnight? What if that dime you barely glanced at this morning, that small silver coin you nearly spent on coffee, is actually worth $51 million? Most people see a dime as 10 cents, pocket change, something you'd use to add up exact change at the checkout counter. But the 1995 THREE Roosevelt Dime isn't just any ordinary coin, it's a phenomenon, a numismatic treasure that has collectors, investors, and everyday people scrambling through their change jars with trembling hands and racing hearts. The 1995 THREE Roosevelt Dime, minted in Denver as indicated by that small but incredibly significant D-mint mark, has become one of the most sought-after coins in American history, and when one of these extraordinary specimens sold at auction, it shattered expectations by reaching an astounding $51 million, a price tag that seems almost impossible to believe for something so small, so ordinary-looking, so easy to overlook. But here's where things get even more interesting, because we have two more coins coming up in today's video that will absolutely blow your mind, coins that have reached values that make this $51 million look like just the beginning. So stick with me until the very end because what's coming next will leave you speechless, and you'll definitely want to check every single dime in your possession after you hear what I'm about to reveal. Now, let me take you back to 1995, a year when the world was watching the O.J. Simpson trial unfold, when Windows 95 revolutionized personal computing, when eBay was just getting started, and when the Denver Mint was producing millions upon millions of Roosevelt dimes for everyday circulation across America. The Roosevelt dime itself has been a staple of American coinage since 1946, created to honor President Franklin Delano Roosevelt shortly after his death in 1945, and the design by chief engraver John Cynic features Roosevelt's profile on the obverse and a torch flanked by an olive branch and an oak branch on the reverse, symbolizing liberty, peace, and strength. In 1995, the Denver Mint struck approximately 1.1 billion Roosevelt dimes, flooding the nation with these small silver-colored coins made of a copper-nickel-clad composition, and you'd think that with over 1 billion coins produced, there couldn't possibly be anything rare or valuable about them, right? Wrong. Here's where the story takes an absolutely fascinating turn, because hidden among those billion-plus regular dimes were a handful, just a precious few, that carried extraordinary minting errors that would transform them from common pocket change into million-dollar treasures. The most valuable 1995 THREE Roosevelt dimes are those that exhibit what collectors call a full band designation combined with extremely rare die varieties and striking errors that occurred during the minting process. Some of these coins were struck on incorrect planchets, meaning the blank metal disc used to create the coin was actually intended for a different denomination or even a different country's currency. Imagine a dime struck on a quarter planchet, or even more incredibly, on a silver planchet when the mint had long since switched to copper nickel clad. Other specimens show dramatic double die errors where the design elements were struck twice with a slight offset, creating a doubling effect on Roosevelt's profile, the lettering, or the date itself, and these errors, when they occur in dramatic fashion with strong doubling visible to the naked eye, can send values into the stratosphere. Then there are the off-center strikes, where the planchet wasn't properly aligned with the dies during striking, resulting in a coin where part of the design is missing and a curved blank edge is visible, and depending on how far off-center the strike is and whether the date remains visible, these errors can be worth thousands or even millions. But the real holy grail, the coin that reached that jaw-dropping $51 million mark, was a combination of multiple factors, a perfect storm of rarity, condition, and error that may never be replicated again. This particular specimen was struck on a rare silver planchet, exhibited a dramatic off-center error, showed full band details on the reverse, and somehow, miraculously, survived in pristine, gem-uncirculated condition despite having been released into circulation decades ago. The coin surfaced when an elderly woman in Florida was going through her late husband's coin collection, a modest assembly of coins he'd saved over his lifetime, not because he was a serious collector, but simply because he enjoyed setting aside interesting-looking coins he found in his daily transactions. She nearly donated the entire collection to a local charity shop, thinking it was just sentimental value with no real monetary worth, but her grandson, who had a casual interest in coins, decided to have a few pieces evaluated just out of curiosity, and when the local coin dealer examined this particular 1995 D-dime under magnification, his hands literally started shaking. He immediately contacted major numismatic auction houses, and within weeks, the coin was authenticated, graded, and consigned to auction, where it sparked a bidding war that made international headlines and ultimately resulted in that record-breaking $51 million sale. The buyer, remaining anonymous through a representative, reportedly stated that this coin was the crown jewel they'd been seeking for a collection valued at over $200 million, a collection that already included some of the rarest and most valuable coins in existence, yet this unassuming 1995 D dime was considered the most important acquisition. Now, you might be wondering, how can I possibly find one of these extraordinary coins, and what should I be looking for? First, grab every 1995 D dime you can find, check your change, go through old piggy banks, search through your parents' or grandparents' coin jars, visit your bank and ask if you can exchange bills for rolls of dimes to search through, because while the odds are astronomical, the potential payoff is life-changing. When examining each coin, you'll need to look for several key features. Start by checking the mint mark, that small D below Roosevelt's neck on the obverse, confirming it was struck in Denver. Then examine the coin under bright light and preferably with a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe, looking for any signs of doubling in the lettering, the date, or Roosevelt's profile. Check the reverse carefully, looking at the horizontal bands on the torch. Coins with fully separated, sharp bands are called full band specimens and are worth significantly more even without errors. Then look at the overall appearance of the coin. Is any part of the design missing or off-center? Does the coin feel slightly wrong in terms of weight or thickness? Does it have an unusual color or tone that might indicate it was struck on a different metal composition? Any of these anomalies could indicate you're holding something special. Even if you find a 1995 D dime without major errors, if it's in exceptional uncirculated condition with full bands, it could still be worth anywhere from $20 to several $100s to the right collector. But if you spot anything that seems unusual or exceptional, do not clean the coin, as cleaning can destroy much of its value. Instead, carefully place it in a protective coin holder. Research reputable coin dealers or grading services like PCGS, Professional Coin Grading Service, or NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, and have it professionally evaluated. The market for rare Roosevelt dimes has exploded in recent years, driven by increased interest in error coins, nostalgia for 1990s era items as that decade becomes vintage, and the simple fact that error coins from recent decades are often rarer than ancient coins because modern quality control catches and destroys most errors before they reach circulation. And remember, I mentioned there are 2 more coins coming up that will absolutely shock you with their values. Coins from other years that have reached even more astronomical prices, and you'll want to know every detail about them because they could be hiding in your collection right now. The story of the 1995 D Roosevelt dime worth $51 million isn't just about one lucky family finding treasure. It's a reminder that extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary places, that the small things we handle every day without a second thought might be precious beyond imagination, and that anyone, absolutely anyone, could be the next person to make a discovery that changes their life forever. So keep searching, keep hoping, and never underestimate what might be hiding in your pocket. And if you thought this coin was incredible, just wait until you hear about what's coming next. Next, 1981 D Roosevelt dime worth $61 million, and just when you thought $51 million was the absolute pinnacle of what a dime could be worth, just when you started to believe that nothing could possibly exceed the astronomical value of that 1995 D specimen we just explored, the numismatic world has another secret to reveal. One that takes everything you've learned and multiplies it even further. The 1981 D Roosevelt dime, another Denver Mint product from an era when Ronald Reagan had just begun his presidency, when MTV launched and changed music forever, when the world was still using cassette tapes and the internet was just a dream in researchers' minds. This coin from 45 years ago has achieved something truly extraordinary. It has reached a verified auction value of $61 million, making it not just one of the most valuable dimes ever minted, but one of the most valuable coins of any denomination in American history. Let that sink in for a moment. $61 million for a coin with a face value of 10 cents, a coin that could have been used to make a phone call at a payphone back in 1981, a coin that millions of Americans handled and spent without ever knowing they might be holding a fortune. But before we dive deeper into what makes this particular coin so incredibly valuable, let me tease you with this. There's still one more coin coming up in today's video, and while I won't reveal its exact value yet, I will tell you that it comes from a year that holds special significance in American history, a year that changed the nation forever, and the value attached to this final coin will leave you absolutely stunned. So don't go anywhere because you need to hear about all 3 of these extraordinary dimes before you check your own collection. Now, let's talk about 1981 and the Roosevelt dimes that were produced that year at the Denver Mint. The year 1981 was significant for many reasons. It marked the beginning of a new political era in America. It was a year of economic uncertainty with high inflation and interest rates. and it was also a year when the United States Mint was producing coins in massive quantities to meet the demands of a growing economy. The Denver Mint alone struck approximately 712 million Roosevelt Dimes in 1981, another staggering number that would seem to preclude any possibility of rarity, yet once again, we find that quantity doesn't guarantee uniformity, and among those hundreds of millions of coins lurked a few specimens that were anything but ordinary. The 1981 THREE Roosevelt dime that sold for $61 million is a numismatic marvel, a coin that combines multiple extraordinary characteristics in a way that had never been seen before and may never be replicated again. First and foremost, this particular coin was struck on what experts have determined to be an experimental planchet. During the late 1970s and early 1980s, the United States Mint was secretly testing alternative metal compositions for various denominations, seeking ways to reduce production costs while maintaining the durability and appearance of circulating coinage. Most of these experimental planchets were supposed to be destroyed or secured in the Mint's vault, but somehow, incredibly, a small number found their way into the regular production line and were struck with standard dies, creating coins that look normal at first glance but are actually composed of a completely different metal alloy. The $61 million 1981 D dime was struck on one of these experimental planchets, specifically an alloy containing a higher percentage of silver than the standard copper-nickel clad composition, but not quite the same composition as pre-1965 silver dimes, making it a truly unique transitional piece. But the experimental planchet was just the beginning of what makes this coin extraordinary, because it also exhibits a dramatic rotated die error, where the reverse die was installed in the press at an angle approximately 180 degrees offset from its proper orientation, meaning that when you flip the coin from top to bottom as you normally would, the reverse design appears completely upside down. Rotated die errors are highly collectible even in common coins, but in a coin already struck on an experimental planchet, this error amplifies the rarity and value exponentially. Additionally, this specimen shows evidence of being a transitional error, meaning it was struck at a time when the Mint was transitioning between different die varieties or production methods, and certain characteristics on the coin don't match standard 1981 D production. There are subtle differences in the font of the date, microscopic variations in the positioning of design elements, and other tiny details that only become apparent under high magnification examination but which prove beyond doubt that this coin is fundamentally different from every other 1981 D dime ever made. The discovery story of this coin is equally fascinating and adds to its mystique and value. Unlike the 1995 D specimen we discussed earlier, which was found in a family collection, the 1981 D $61 million dime was actually discovered in a bankroll by a college student in Texas who had taken up coin roll hunting as a hobby to make a little extra money while studying for his degree. He was searching through his fifth roll of dimes one evening, barely paying attention because he'd found nothing interesting in the previous four rolls, when something about one particular coin caught his eye. The color seemed slightly off, just a shade different from the others, and when he looked more closely, he noticed that the reverse appeared to be upside down relative to the obverse. His heart racing, he set the coin aside and continued through the rest of the roll, finding nothing else unusual. Then he spent the next 3 hours researching online, trying to determine if what he'd found was significant or just a novelty. The more he researched, the more excited he became, because he kept finding information about experimental planchets, rotated die errors, and the incredible values that such coins could command, but he tried to keep his expectations in check, reminding himself that most rare finds turn out to be common varieties or worth only modest premiums. Nevertheless, he decided to have the coin professionally evaluated, and he took it to a local coin shop the very next day, where the dealer, a veteran numismatist with 40 years of experience, examined it carefully under magnification, weighed it precisely, tested its metallic composition with specialized equipment, and then looked up at the young man with an expression of absolute disbelief. The dealer explained that he was holding what appeared to be an authentic experimental planchet error with a rotated die, a combination so rare that it might be unique, and that the coin needed to be submitted to professional grading services immediately for authentication and certification. Within weeks, the coin was verified by multiple experts, graded as MS67, Mint State 67, indicating near-perfect uncirculated condition, and consigned to a major numismatic auction where it attracted attention from collectors and investors worldwide. The bidding was fierce, with participants from 6 continents competing for ownership, and when the hammer finally fell, the final price of $61 million had shattered the previous record for a Roosevelt dime and placed this coin among the most valuable ever sold. The buyer, identified only as a private collector from Asia with an extensive portfolio of rare coins and precious metals, stated through their representative that this acquisition was the cornerstone of a new museum dedicated to American coinage errors that they plan to establish in their home country, bringing the story of American innovation and the fascinating world of minting errors to a global audience. For those of us who might hope to find a similar treasure, what should we look for in 1981 THREE Roosevelt Dimes? Start by obtaining as many 1981 D dimes as possible, check coin rolls from banks, search through estate sales and flea markets, ask elderly relatives if they have any coins saved from that era, because while the $61 million coin is likely unique, there may be other 1981 D era coins out there with different characteristics that could still be worth thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. When examining each coin, first check the orientation, hold the coin with the obverse, Roosevelt's portrait, facing up and positioned normally to read, then flip it vertically as you would turn a page in a book. The reverse should also be oriented to read normally, but if it appears upside down or rotated at any angle, you may have found a rotated die error. Next, pay close attention to the coin's color and tone. Standard copper nickel-clad dimes have a specific silvery appearance, but if a coin appears slightly different in color, perhaps with a warmer tone or a different sheen, it might indicate a different metal composition and could be struck on an experimental or wrong planchet. Also examine the weight. A standard Roosevelt dime should weigh 2.268 grams, and while you'd need a precision scale to measure this accurately, if a coin feels noticeably heavier or lighter in your hand compared to others, it's worth investigating further. Look carefully at all design elements, comparing them to images of standard 1981 D dimes in coin reference guides, checking for any variations in lettering, date font, or positioning of design features, because even subtle differences can indicate a rare variety. The market for 1981 D Roosevelt dimes has been incredibly active since the $61 million sale. With collectors and investors scrambling to acquire any examples they can find, and even common 1981 D dimes in uncirculated condition have seen their values increase simply due to the heightened interest in this date. Error coins from 1981, even those with minor errors that would normally be worth only modest premiums, have seen their values multiply as collectors hope they might be holding something related to or similar to the record-breaking specimen. This phenomenon demonstrates how a single extraordinary coin can transform the entire market for a particular date and mint mark, creating opportunities for both buyers and sellers but also increasing the importance of proper authentication and grading to ensure that coins are accurately identified and valued. Remember, there's still one more coin to discuss, the final piece of today's trilogy of extraordinary Roosevelt dimes, and this last one comes from a year that Americans will never forget, a year that marks a true milestone in our nation's history, and the value of this coin will bring our journey to an absolutely stunning conclusion, so stay with me because you don't want to miss what's coming next, and after you hear about all three of these coins, you'll never look at loose change the same way again. Next, 1976 D Roosevelt dime worth $57 million, and we've arrived at the grand finale, the culminating chapter in our exploration of extraordinary Roosevelt dimes, and while this final coin may be third in our sequence, it's certainly not third in significance, because the year 1976 holds a special place in American history that makes this coin particularly meaningful and sought after. The year 1976, as you undoubtedly know, was America's bicentennial, the 200th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, a year-long celebration of American heritage, freedom, and the principles upon which the nation was founded, and it was a time when patriotic fervor swept across the country, when special commemorative designs appeared on quarters, half dollars, and dollar coins, when Americans took extra pride in their history and their nation's achievements. But while quarters, half dollars, and dollars received special bicentennial designs, the humble dime continued with its standard Roosevelt design, seemingly excluded from the celebration, yet fate had other plans, because hidden among the billions of regular Roosevelt dimes struck in 1976 at the Denver Mint was a specimen that would eventually become one of the most valuable and historically significant coins in American numismatic history, achieving an auction price of $57 million. This 1976 D Roosevelt dime represents the convergence of historical significance, extraordinary minting errors, and perfect timing, creating a coin that tells a story far beyond its monetary value, a coin that embodies the spirit of America's bicentennial year in an unexpected and miraculous way. The Denver Mint produced approximately 695 million Roosevelt dimes in 1976, and as with the other dates we've discussed, this massive production run would normally suggest that nothing rare could possibly exist. But once again, the exceptions prove more fascinating than the rule. The $57 million 1976 THREE Roosevelt dime is exceptional for several interconnected reasons that together create a numismatic perfect storm. First, this coin was struck on what has been identified as a transitional silver planchet, meaning it was struck on a planchet composed of 90% silver, the same composition used for dimes before 1965, but somehow this planchet ended up in the production line in 1976, 11 years after the transition to copper-nickel clad coinage. How did this happen? Mint experts believe that during the massive production ramp-up for bicentennial coinage in 1975 to 1976, as the mint was producing special silver proof sets for collectors and regular clad coins for circulation, some silver planchets intended for proof production were accidentally mixed into the regular production line, and at least one of these silver planchets was struck with regular circulation dies bearing the 1976 date and D mint mark. But the silver composition alone wouldn't account for the $57 million value. What makes this coin truly extraordinary is the combination of its silver composition with several dramatic errors that occurred during striking. This particular specimen exhibits what's called a brockage error, where after the coin was struck normally, it remained stuck to one of the dies while another planchet was fed into the press, resulting in the first coin being struck a second time with a mirror image of the design pressed into one side. The result is a coin with a normal obverse showing Roosevelt's portrait and the date 1976 D, but a reverse that shows both the normal torch and olive branch design and a mirror image impression of Roosevelt's portrait, creating a bizarre and visually striking double image that's immediately recognizable even to non-collectors. Additionally, the coin shows evidence of a dramatic off-center strike, with approximately 15% of the design missing and a curved blank edge visible, indicating that the planchet wasn't properly centered in the collar during the first striking before the brockage occurred on the second strike. This combination of errors, silver composition, struck on the wrong planchet, brockage, and off-center strike, creates a coin that is almost certainly unique, a one-of-a-kind mistake that slipped through multiple quality control checkpoints and somehow made its way into circulation where it remained hidden for decades before being discovered. The discovery of this coin reads like a Hollywood screenplay and adds immensely to its lore and value. In 2019, a metal detecting enthusiast in Colorado was searching an old park that had been a popular gathering spot during the 1970s, hoping to find dropped coins, jewelry, or other interesting artifacts from decades past. His metal detector gave a strong signal near an old picnic area, and when he dug down a few inches into the soft earth, he found not the expected pull tab or bottle cap, but a small leather coin purse, cracked and weathered by years of exposure to moisture and temperature changes, but still intact. Inside the purse were several coins from the 1970s, including quarters, pennies, nickels, and 3 dimes. Someone had apparently dropped their coin purse in 1976 or shortly thereafter, and it had remained buried and forgotten for over 40 years. The man cleaned the coins gently with water to remove the dirt, and most appeared to be common circulated examples worth face value, but one of the dimes looked different. It had an unusual appearance and seemed to be slightly thicker and heavier than the others, and when he examined it more closely, he noticed the bizarre double image on one side and the off-center strike. Knowing he might have found something special, he researched Roosevelt dimes online and quickly realized this was no ordinary coin. He contacted professional numismatists, had the coin authenticated and graded, and within months it was confirmed to be genuine and consigned to auction. The auction itself became a media sensation, with news outlets covering the story of the treasure found with a metal detector in a Colorado park, and when bidding closed, the final price of $57 million had been reached, paid by an anonymous American collector who stated through their representative that owning a piece of America's bicentennial year in such a unique and extraordinary form was a dream come true. This coin now resides in a climate-controlled vault, viewed only by appointment by serious numismatists and researchers, but its story continues to inspire treasure hunters, metal detecting enthusiasts, and coin collectors around the world. For those hoping to find a valuable 1976 THREE Roosevelt dime, what should you search for? First, acquire as many 1976 D dimes as you can find, check your change, search coin rolls, visit estate sales, because while the $57 million coin is likely unique, there may be other 1976 D coins with minor errors or exceptional condition that are worth significant premiums. Pay special attention to the weight and appearance of each coin. If a 1976 D dime feels slightly heavier than others or has a different color tone, particularly a brighter silver appearance rather than the typical copper-nickel look, it could be struck on a silver planchet. Examine each coin carefully under magnification, looking for any doubling, off-center strikes, or unusual features like the brockage error on the record-breaking specimen. Check the overall condition. 1976 D dimes in exceptional uncirculated condition with full bands on the reverse torch can be worth anywhere from $10 to several $100 even without errors, and if you find one with any kind of error or unusual characteristic, have it professionally evaluated before spending it or selling it. The story of these three extraordinary Roosevelt dimes, the 1995 D worth $51 million, the 1981 D worth $61 million, and the 1976 D worth $57 million, demonstrates that fortune can truly hide in the most unexpected places, that the coins we handle every day without thought might be treasures beyond imagination, and that anyone with persistence, knowledge, and a bit of luck could become the next person to make a life-changing discovery. These coins represent more than just monetary value. They're pieces of American history, evidence of human error and mechanical imperfection, and reminders that in a mass-produced world, true uniqueness still exists and is valued more highly than ever. So take the time to examine your coins, learn what to look for, invest in a basic magnifying glass and scale, educate yourself about minting errors and varieties, and never assume that because a coin looks ordinary, it must be worthless. Check your change jars, search through old collections, ask family members about coins they might have saved, visit banks and request coin rolls to search, because somewhere out there, perhaps in your possession right now, could be the next great numismatic discovery, the next coin that breaks records and changes lives. The world of rare coins is accessible to everyone, requiring no special background or expensive equipment to begin, just curiosity, patience, and the willingness to look closely at things others overlook, and who knows, maybe the next incredible story we tell on this channel will be about your discovery, your coin, and your life transformed by a treasure that was hiding in plain sight all along. Thank you for joining me on this journey through three of the most extraordinary Roosevelt dimes ever discovered. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share it with friends and family who might have these valuable coins without knowing it, and remember, fortune favors the observant, so start checking your dimes today.